7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
इस समय आप अपने स्क्रीन पे देख रहे हैं 2 S-200 रॉकेट
Plus 5 seconds.
दोनों का प्रज्वलन हो गया है। टन वाले मार्क 3 रॉकेट नौगन को ऊपर की ओर लेके जा रहे हैं।
We have a liftoff. We have a liftoff. A perfectly normal liftoff. S-200. First stage performance normal.
कि हमने अपने पहले प्रयास में
Well, applause and congratulations there. The Indian Space Research Organization, or ISRO, has scripted history yet again. Today, India has successfully launched its most ambitious project yet, the Chandrayaan 2 from the Satish Dhawan Space Center in Sriharikota. ISRO scientists heaved a sigh of relief and applauded when Chandrayaan 2 was placed into orbit 16 minutes after the launch. The spacecraft will spend the next 48 days first orbiting the Earth and then the Moon before it finally makes a soft landing in the south pole of the Moon. The lander Vikram and the rover will carry out research on the soil, rocks and the possibility of water on the surface of the Moon. All credit also should go to the two people who were leading this project, women incidentally, Vanitha and Ritu Karidal, ISRO's two women directors who were in charge of this mission, who effectively broken through the glass ceiling of this industry that tends to be male-dominated with this exciting project. Now, even though their work isn't over until Chandrayaan 2 lands on the Moon in September later this year, we applaud the scientists of ISRO for the amazing work that they have done and the pride that they have brought to every single Indian today. Dr. W. Selvamurthy joins me right now, the president of Amity Science, Technology and Innovation Foundation at Amity University. Dr. Selvamurthy has been active in many very important projects and headed research and development at the DRDO for the Government of India. Dr. Selvamurthy, good evening and thank you for joining us. I can see by the smile on your face already that this project is something that has brought you great pride. I want you to explain to our audience, if you will, please, what this means to the understanding of the Moon. Once the rover lands on the south pole of the Moon, which I understand no other science mission has no other space mission has done before, what would this mean to our understanding of the Moon as a race, as humanity?
It's a great day for India today, that we have been able to demonstrate to the global community our technology prowess and also scientific acumen in terms of launching a very big challenging mission, Chandrayaan 2, which has many challenges, and this is the first mission with the GSLV Mark 3 into the lunar mission, and we are also going to land the rover in the southern pole of the Moon. That's another challenge. So Moon has been always beautiful to look at. People have admired, and there is a lot of romance with Moon. But then the space scientists have a special attraction to the Moon, because it's a test bed where you can launch many activities for the planetary research, space research. So it's a very important achievement. And every system which has been used, right from orbiter, lander and rover, are totally indigenous, developed in the country, in spite of the fact that we were looking for some international collaboration which was not available forthcoming. Then the scientists did that all alone, ISRO scientists. So our compliments to right from the chairman ISRO, the scientists, staff, the industries who have partnered, and also the academic institutions have contributed to this mission. So the Moon is a very important in terms of research in space, for the simple reason that we will be able to understand a natural satellite, how does it behave and what is the origin of Moon, because we don't know how it happened. Many things we don't understand, how the Moon itself came into existence. So this research will look into the fossils available, the fossil residues available in the southern pole of the moon, which in turn will give a lot of valuable data and information with regard to the evolution of moon itself. And the topography, the elements available, the minerals available, the atmosphere, all these are very interesting to study. So I think this particular mission is going to yield many fruitful results, because we are one of the now, once we successfully land our rover into the moon, we are one of the four the countries, including Russia, US, China, and now it will be India. And certainly it will happen, because we have tremendous credibility as well as the reliability of the technologies of ISRO, which they have done it in many missions, including ASLV, PSLV, now GSLV. All these missions, including Mars mission, they have done it very effectively. So I have no doubt that the whole mission will be successful. And today we had a wonderful launch of the Chandrayaan-2 at prescribed time, 2:43 p.m. and all the system functioned well. And then it also reached all these 3 stages, and then now it has reached the orbit, the Earth orbit. And I'm sure that many useful information, valuable information will come out of this, and that will also pave way for more research. And many countries have admired this capability, and it will also bring in more revenue in terms of when the other countries would like to do experiments which they may not have this capability, particularly developing world, the SAARC countries. So we can use it as a technology diplomacy in bringing the many countries into alliance. Like for example, Southeast Space Mission we can have for the region. So like this, I hope that this will have many positive repercussions for the country and also the space scientific community itself. So I compliment the whole ISRO for this wonderful job they have done, and they were also congratulated by Honorable Prime Minister as soon as the mission was successful, and many other countries, including the NASA, has been congratulating. So we are really proud.
We saw a glitch happen on the first launch date. You know, a couple of hours before launch, they called it off because there was a technical glitch. We understand also now that the ISRO scientists, specifically on the rocket mission, had to work day and night to make sure that they didn't lose too many days. Incidentally, we understand that now they have adjusted the number of days in orbit of the Earth and the Moon so that the landing on the Moon remains on the same date, and the date doesn't change. How hard, in your opinion, would it have been for these scientists to ensure that they didn't lose time because of that glitch?
Such glitches and also problems and challenges like what happened when we launched it a week ago is normally happens in such mega missions, because you have so many technologies involved, right from materials, propulsion, control, guidance, navigation, very high power computation, trajectory accuracy, and also the payload separations. All this involves very high-end technologies. So that is why in such mega missions, never it happens in the first go, everything goes well. And that is true for our mission also. And it was a problem in the while filling the fuels. You know, you have 3 fuels: oxygen fuel, hydrogen fuel, as well as helium, liquid helium. So when you are filling this, the leak was detected and the pressure was dropping. So it won't get the necessary propulsion to get into that velocity as well as the thrust which you need to give for the spacecraft to move up to the required orbit. But today, after the scientists, after last 1 week, they may not have even had food, sleep, and then they worked, ISRO scientists worked so hard. And today they have been able to demonstrate, overcome all the earlier difficulties which they have encountered. And the mission has been wonderful, and it has been like a textbook takeoff. The launch was like a textbook. The trajectory which they predicted and the trajectory which the spacecraft followed was almost the same. So it was a feat to look at, and also the bliss and happiness which every scientist in India would have experienced is phenomenal because of the success of Chandrayaan-2.
Dr. Sarvamurthy, very quick and last question. After all of your contribution at the DRDO, you now work with the university encouraging younger scientists. How important is a space program and missions like this to encourage young aspiring scientists to not go overseas and dedicate their brilliance to India?
Such kind of successful demonstration of our capability in science and technology is going to trigger the passion for young scientific minds who are in the undergraduate, postgraduate or doctoral programs to take space science and technology as their career, as their life. So I think the Chandrayaan 2 this mission is again yet another important trigger and also ignition of this passion for the youngsters. So I feel that in the universities where you have the young, creative, innovative minds, this kind of excitation will be very, very valuable. Like for example in Amity University, today all the students were witnessing we have put it in 3 halls in Amity University.
Yes.
And then we showed to all the youngsters. So that is the phase in which you have the passion for undertaking and looking at an image building and ambition, aspiration.
Sure.
So certainly ISRO will build such connectivity with universities because they have already started that to connect with various universities known as National Academic Partners.
Dr. Sarvaraj, thank you for joining us. Yes, unfortunately, thank you for joining us here on Mirror Now and giving us your perspective really on the Chandrayaan 2 launch. In fact, earlier today I spoke with the first Indian in space, Wing Commander Rakesh Sharma, who was a hero to all of us who grew up in the 80s and the 90s. Listen to that conversation.
Like every other Indian, my fingers were crossed. And when Chairman ISRO announced that the orbital parameters were better than what we had expected, I was extremely happy to hear this. And so I join all my other countrymen in being self-congratulatory. And thanks, of course, to the professionalism of ISRO and all their team members. I'm extremely proud that this launch has been successful.
Well, the chairperson of ISRO also mentioned the sort of scare they got when there was a technical difficulty on the previous launch date, and he said we worked day and night to fix that. In your experience, what kind of dedication and determination would it have taken for the scientists and the mathematicians of ISRO to make sure that they stayed on schedule?
Well, I would say that what they have displayed in fixing this glitch in such a short time, which has ended up in this successful launch, has been no different to their work ethic and their work culture. And that is what has brought ISRO to where it presently is. They have been spectacularly successful. They have been running a very cheap space program with excellent results. And this is only possible because they have been thorough professionals. This particular bug fixing demonstrates that internally their processes are very matured.
Wing Commander Sharma, obviously the other thing that we must note is the cost within which ISRO manages most of its missions, especially this one, which is really, as the chairperson pointed out, 3 missions rolled into one. The world is watching right now, slightly with their jaws hanging open, that we managed to do this with 900 crore rupees.
Yes, indeed. And it isn't only because of cheap labor costs, I can tell you that. It is because of a whole lot of innovation, jugaad, if you may, but a jugaad which has been well thought out.
Well, speaking as a young person who grew up in the shadow of your achievement, and you were a hero to all of us, an active space program that ISRO is now demonstrating will be an encouragement to a lot of young people who want to become scientists in India, who want to be part of the space program in India. Do you think this would be a good way to retain our talent and encourage more young people now to look at science and astrophysics and mathematics as an active future here?
Indeed. I mean, this should tell all the youngsters that space technology is a going concern in our country, and that it offers very many more options from a career standpoint.
Commander Sharma there giving us, that strong voice of encouragement. We all remember from that phone call that has been played out over and over again when he spoke to the then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi back in 1984 when he was the first Indian citizen to be sent out in space. He said, "Sare jahan se acha Hindustan hamara." All right, moving on to our next story. The central government has been very aggressively promoting the Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao campaign. But here's a very alarming story about the sex ratio disparity in our country. In the last 3 months, not a single girl child, not one, was born in as many as 132 villages in Uttarakhand's Uttarkashi district. According to the Health Department report, all 216 babies born in these 132 villages were all boys. Now, this indicates very plainly that the baby girls are simply being murdered. Activists suspect the possibility of female feticide. The district magistrate has said that they will closely monitor the situation over the next few months. Listen in.
काम कर रहे हैं और उन क्षेत्रों को या उन आशाओं के एरिया को आइडेंटिफाई किया गया जहाँ पे बच्चों की स्पेशली बालिकाओं का जन्म शून्य है या कम प्रतिशत है, तो उसे हम लगातार मॉनिटर करें और कारणों की जांच भी की जा रही है कि किस कारण से वहाँ पे लिंगानुपात पर असर पड़ रहा है। इस संबंध में 0 से 6 वर्ष की पूरी आयु के बच्चों को हम कंटिन्यूसली मॉनिटर करेंगे कि उस वर्ग में लिंगानुपात क्या है या पिछले 1 साल में लिंगानुपात क्या है। तो इन सारी चीज़ों पर स्टडी की जा रही है और कोशिश ये की जाएगी कि जन जागरूकता और अन्य माध्यमों से उन क्षेत्रों में लिंगानुपात को बढ़ाया जाए।
Well, joining me right now on the conversation, Poonam Muthayya, the Executive Director of the Population Foundation of India. Poonamji, thank you for joining us on this story. It's distressing and it's heartbreaking to find out that this sort of thing is still happening in India and at this scale, where for 3 whole months not a single baby girl was born. Now, is there a possibility at all, even a slight sliver of a possibility, that this might be the natural way and there is no foul play here? Or is it plain evidence that female babies are being killed?
It is plain evidence and the most concrete way of demonstrating how we don't want girl babies. I have no doubt that this is as a result of female feticide. If not all the numbers, then majority of them. I don't know why we are even wondering. I heard the district magistrate. There is no any other possibility. And as fertility declines, this is going to happen in a society where we have a son preference, and especially in the backdrop of coercive measures being called upon. This is a wake-up call, tragic as it is. This is a call for all those who are saying we need a 2-child norm. Many more women will be forced to have only boys and abort female babies. It's a double whammy on women. I am very clear, Faye, this is feticide and nothing else.
So there are 2 things here, Poonamji. First of all, it's impossible for this to happen unless there is a large network of doctors who are willing to give out the sex of the baby beforehand, which we know is completely illegal. There must be a large network of abortion clinics as well. And the reaction, like you did mention, of the district magistrate seems very tempered for the gravity of what we have discovered from these numbers.
Absolutely. There is not only a large network, but I am sure the administration is aware of this network. There is no way, the PCPNDT Act is a very well-designed act. In 1994, it was enacted. And if you follow that, there is no way you can have so many illegal sex-selective abortions. So the administration has obviously looked the other way. And this is not happening only in Uttarakhand, Faye. It's happening across the country. And the conviction rates are very low in India for those who are even caught. If you look at Haryana, there have been only 5 people convicted, because what happens is the case, the way it's recorded, is so weak. So even when there is reports, people get away because of lack of evidence. So we really need to be serious, and just slogans will not help. We need to change our social norms, and we need to do something really drastic. And yes, there is a population problem in India, but this is the population problem. The fact that we are not allowing any girls to be born. Today it's happening in Uttarakhand, but when we take stock in the country, this will be happening in many other parts of India with terrible consequences.
Is this a failure of the local administration? Is it a failure of the police? Is it there was one note, if I may, that the district magistrate said they will look into the Anganwadi workers and find out if the ASHA workers in some way are involved. What's your response to that?
Well, I have honestly, while I have enormous respect for ASHAs, ASHA, we have heard anecdotal evidence in different states where ASHAs are helping women get sex-selective abortion or testing the baby. Now, please remember, and let's all not fool ourselves into thinking that ASHA's social norms are very different from the social norms in our society, which there is not just son preference, but there is an abhorrence for girls. And unless we change social norms, this will not change, along with punitive measures. Now, everybody's accomplice, society, administration, police. There is no way that the police does not know this is happening. They will even know better than the administration. So it is something we have to take drastic measures. And when the Prime Minister gave the slogan, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, he has to walk the talk in getting the administration to take tough actions. And we know this Prime Minister, when he wants, if he wants, he can do it.
All right, Poonamji, many thanks for joining me here on the Urban Debate and giving us some perspective on this very distressing, heartbreaking story. 132 villages in Uttarakhand, and it turns out that not a single girl was born in these villages over a course of 3 months. 216 babies born, all boys. That is not natural. That means that the baby girls are being murdered. So much left to be done in this country. Quickly going to go back to Karnataka for a second. We just want to take a look at what's going on in the State Assembly. There was, from what we understand, a conversation about that fake resignation letter. This is not real, this is fake. And Mr. Kumaraswamy is waving it about in the Assembly. But there also was some ruckus a while ago. But it does seem like there is, a conversation happening at this point, and it's members of the BJP who are speaking. Do we have a live feed of what's happening in the Assembly? We'll just listen in, please.
Nobody can pressurize. ನೀವು ನಿಮ್ಮ ಹೇಳಿ ಸರ್ ಹೇಳಿ ಝೀರೋ ಟ್ರಾಫಿಕ್ ಹೇಳ್ಬಿಡಿ ಸರ್ ಆಮೇಲೆ ಮಾತಾಡಿ. ಈಗ ಮಧ್ಯಾಹ್ನ ಮಾನ್ಯ ಹಿರಿಯ ಸದಸ್ಯರು ರಾಮಸ್ವಾಮಿ ಅವರು ಝೀರೋ ಟ್ರಾಫಿಕ್ ವಿಚಾರ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ನಾನು ಕೂಡ ಝೀರೋ ಟ್ರಾಫಿಕ್ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ಪ್ರೊವೈಡ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂತ ಆವೇಶದಲ್ಲೇ ಮುಂದಕ್ಕೆ ಹೀಗಾದ್ರೆ ಏನ್ ಗತಿ ಅಂತ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಕೊಡ್ತೀವಿ ಅಂತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಮಾತನ್ನು ಹೇಳಿದೆ. ರಾಜ್ಯದ ಡೈರೆಕ್ಟರ್ ಜನರಲ್ ಆಫ್ ಪೊಲೀಸ್ ರವರು, ಅಡಿಷನಲ್ ಚೀಫ್ ಸೆಕ್ರೆಟರಿ ಹೋಮ್ ಡಿಪಾರ್ಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಅವರು, ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ಸಿಟಿಯ ಕಮಿಷನರ್ ಅವರು ಆ ವಿಜುವಲ್ಸ್ ತಗೊಂಡು ಎಲ್ಲ ಬಂದು ನನಗೆ ತೋರಿಸಿದ್ರು. 4 ಕಡೆ ಸಿಗ್ನಲ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಂತು ಬಂದಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಸುಪ್ರೀಂ ಕೋರ್ಟ್ನ ಅಬ್ಸರ್ವೇಷನ್ ಏನಿದೆ, ಈ ಸದಸ್ಯರುಗಳಿಗೆ ಸಭಾಧ್ಯಕ್ಷ ನೋಡಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗುವಾಗ adequate protection ಕೊಡಿ, ಅರೇಂಜ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡಿ, ಮೂವ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಇದು ಮಾಡಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿರೋದ್ರ ಮೇಲೆ.
Who's standing, Vinay, just to give a translation to our viewers as well. This is HK Patil. He's a member of the Congress, and he had a little earlier in the day also brought up this problem, where he said that the MLAs who are rebelling, when they did come to meet with the speaker in that bus, that they were given what was called a zero traffic channel, which is they were escorted straight into the city without having to stop at any traffic lights or. And the speaker now responding to that, saying he's spoken with the police commissioner, with the head of traffic police, and with several other people, and they have stopped at least 8 or 10 different traffic lights, he says. And he also said that the Supreme Court had instructed at that point they be given adequate security. So they had a police escort, but there was not an escort that was, it was not a police escort that was taking them through traffic. It was a security detail. So that's the clarification he's offering at this point. And I get the feeling that this is going to go on for a while, because it doesn't feel like they're building into any sort of, end. Do you think there's a possibility they might vote tonight?
It's certainly something is going to happen tonight. I mean, it's obviously, as you said, it's building up towards that, because if that wasn't the case, they would have either adjourned the House. The Speaker seems to be no more to do that. It's absolutely clear now, because he would have done it by now. And now if he does it, he's going to just go back on a lot of things that he has said in the last couple of hours or so. I mean, he's put his dignity, personal dignity at stake. Yes. He's put his the chair's dignity at stake, and I don't see him going back at all on this.
So, if we just explain this for our audience, the Congress side doesn't have, or the Congress JDS side doesn't have too much choice. They can't walk out, because if he holds a vote in their absence, their numbers will fall even further.
Absolutely.
So they have to sit until he adjourns the House, and he is not adjourning the House at any cost. I mean, no amount of ruckus has caused him to adjourn the House.
That's right. And look, I mean, to be honest, I am also a little intrigued. Although the Speaker is talking a lot and he's quote unquote saying all the right things, but I'm a little intrigued by his conduct as well. And I'll tell you why. The Speaker enjoys enormous powers in the way he or she wants to conduct the House. The Constitution is very clear on that. And he has enough powers to enforce and fix and ensure that a voting happens at a particular hour. So I have a feeling that this is something that he's also playing in many ways. Either he's playing for his own political future or whatever else, because remember, he was an appointee of the JDS Congress government, and clearly he sees that government going out. He needs to find himself. I mean, he doesn't want him to be in the wilderness as well. But clearly, it's not as if he doesn't have the powers to bring the House to vote at by a particular hour, but he's not doing it. I mean, he's been saying a lot of things, but he's not given a cut-off deadline. And the Speaker has every right and the authority to give a cut-off deadline, say by 6 p.m. This should happen.
I understand that Mr. Kumaraswamy is saying something. We'll just listen in, please.
ಬಂದಿಲ್ಲ 15 ಜನ ಶಾಸಕರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಅವರು ಹೇಳಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ತಮ್ಮ ರೂಲಿಂಗ್ ನ ಹಿನ್ನೆಲೆ ಒಳಗೆ ಆತಂಕದಿಂದ ಭಯದಿಂದ ಬರ್ತಾರೆ ಅಂತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಭಾವನೆಯಿಂದ ಅವರು ಹೇಳಿಲ್ಲ ಅನ್ನೋದು ನನ್ನ ಅಭಿಪ್ರಾಯ. ಜ್ಞಾನೋದಯ ಆಗ್ಬೋದು, ಆ ಜ್ಞಾನೋದಯ ಆಗೋದ್ರ ಮುಖಾಂತರ ಬರ್ಬೋದು ಅಂತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಒಂದು ಅನಿಸಿಕೆನಲ್ಲಿ ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಳಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅನ್ನೋದು ನನ್ನ ಅಭಿಪ್ರಾಯ, ಅಧ್ಯಕ್ಷ. ಕಾರಣ, ಇದೇ ಸದನದಲ್ಲಿ ಹಲವಾರು ವರ್ಷಗಳ ಹಿಂದೆ ನಡೆದಂತ ಇದೇ ರೀತಿಯ ಒಂದು ಪ್ರಕರಣ ಏನಿದೆ, ಇದ್ದಂತ ಮುಖ್ಯಮಂತ್ರಿಗಳ ವಿರುದ್ಧ ಹೊರಟಂತ ಹಲವಾರು ಶಾಸಕರು ಪುನಃ ವಾಪಸ್ ಬಂದಂತ ಘಟನೆಗಳೇನಿದೆ, ಇದೇನು ಹೊಸದಲ್ಲ. ಏನು ಪಾಪ ಬಹಳ ಖುಷಿಯಾಗಿ ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ಹೇಳ್ತಿದ್ದ, ಬಂದ್ಬಿಡ್ತಾರ ಅನ್ನೋ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಕುಹಕದ ನಗು ಏನಿದೆ, ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಏನೇನಿದೆ ಅಂತಕ್ಕಂಥದ್ದು ಯಾರು ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೂ ಅರ್ಥ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋಬೋದು ಏನ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀರಿ ಅಂತ. ಅದರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನಾನು ಚಾರ್ಜ್ ಮಾಡ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ, ಅಧ್ಯಕ್ಷ. ಈಗ ಒಂದು ಕಡೆ ಮಾಧುಸ್ವಾಮಿ ಅವರು ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮೇಲೆ ಅಪಾರವಾದಂತ ಗೌರವ ಇದೆ ಅಂತಾರೆ, ಅಪಾರವಾದಂತ ನಂಬಿಕೆ ಇದೆ. ತಾವು ಈ ಒಂದು ಸದನದ ಸಭಾಧ್ಯಕ್ಷರಾದಾಗ ಇಡೀ ನಾವೆಲ್ಲ ಸದನದ ಸದಸ್ಯರು ಮೆಚ್ಕೊಂಡ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೇವೆ ನಿಮ್ಮನ್ನ, ನಿಮ್ಮ ಇಲ್ಲಿಯ ಒಂದು ಅಧ್ಯಕ್ಷ ಸ್ಥಾನದ ಪೀಠದಲ್ಲಿ ಕೆಲಸವನ್ನು ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ನಿರ್ವಹಣೆ ಮಾಡತಕ್ಕಂಥ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಗೌರವ ತಂದು ಕೊಡ್ತೀರಿ ಅಂತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಮಾತು ಒಂದು ಕಡೆ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಮತ್ತೊಂದು ಕಡೆ ಪದೇ ಪದೇ ಅಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲ ಹೋಗಿ ನ್ಯಾಯಾಲಯಗಳನ್ನ ಆಶ್ರಯಿಸ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಇವತ್ತು ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮೇಲೆ ನಂಬಿಕೆ.
So the Chief Minister Kumaraswamy is speaking again in the assembly, and it does seem, and I must warn you that it does seem like this is going to go on for a while. It doesn't look anywhere near any sort of vote. As we can see, Mr. H.K. Patil he's not sat down yet, even though his Chief Minister is speaking at this point. He does seem adamant to finish what he had prepared to say. Before that, and you can see that paper that you can see on the left side of your screen, that is a fake resignation letter that did the rounds that Mr. Kumaraswamy brought to the House to show people that it's a forged letter and it's not something that he signed. Quickly taking a look at some of the other stories right now, and we'll come back to this if there is any movement that you should know of. Just a few months to go before the state of Maharashtra has assembly elections, and the Maharashtra Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis has now written a letter to the Chief Election Commissioner suggesting the linking of voter IDs with Aadhaar cards. According to Mr. Fadnavis, this step will add transparency and will prevent bogus voting. He also suggests that it will make voter verification far more efficient for the Election Commission officers during the election. Now, linking Aadhaar and voter ID is something that various citizens and activists have demanded in the past, but this is the first time someone in government has made the same suggestion. Will it be a good thing, and should the Election Commission consider it? Joining me on the show, Atul Shah for the BJP, and Apar Gupta is a senior lawyer with the Supreme Court. Apar Gupta, you first. Do you see this as a positive move, linking the Aadhaar card to the voter ID before elections?
I disagree that will be a positive move, because the primary purpose for linking Aadhaar with the voter election rolls by itself is not clear. In fact, if one looks at the research, and I specifically refer to the State of Aadhaar report in 2017-18, which was published, it reports that the errors, self-reported errors in the Aadhaar database are 1.5 times higher when compared to the electoral database. And secondly, if you look at the Aadhaar enrollment and process itself, the legal act, section 9 quite clearly says that Aadhaar is not the basis of either citizenship or domicile. So it'll involve a lot of expense, and there's no clear purpose it's satisfying. It'll in fact lead to a higher degree of integration of a faulty database with a much better database, which is run by the Election Commission. And what's been past experience? That's also one good insight to share, possibly. So there has been the linking of the electronic, the electoral pictorial IDs and Aadhaar with in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, and there have been reported deletions of people close to about 30 lakh names, and a lot of those reports then subsequently, when the state elections were being conducted, were, why is my name missing from the electoral roll? And certainly the finger of suspicion did point towards the linking process itself. So, you know, there's a whole question mark why Aadhaar is being linked to the electoral roll here. What is this? What purpose it will satisfy? And also, given that it's not the basis of citizenship or domicile, it may actually lead to incrementally movement towards a system that undermines universal adult suffrage, which is only open to citizens of India.
Well, let me take that question to Atul Shah of the Maharashtra BJP. Mr. Shah, if you could help us understand or answer some of the questions that Apar Gupta has asked as to what the purpose would be of linking Aadhaar with the voter ID.
See, we are the largest democracy in the world today, and still we are groping in dark in as far as the electoral rolls are concerned. The Chief Minister has suggested and written to the Election Commission that every time when the new process of electoral roll has been done, there are lacunas, there are shortages, there are deletions, there are duplicate voters. Something has to be done about that. Linking of Aadhaar will bring transparency, cleaning up of roll. This process now, as Maharashtra is concerned, there are 16 lakh voters above the age of 80, but the roll says 28 lakhs. Somewhere this has to be linked with Aadhaar. The Election Commission can consider this, and plus there will be a biometric identification which will, you know, totally do away with the indelible ink which has been used. So they're looking at the transformation in the IT sector. Whatever impediments are there, that can be clearer, and we'll have to change the so many, you know, it's a tedious thing. So much of time, so much of manual labor is put into that.
Mr. Shah, I just have one counter question for you before I take this, before I allow Apar his rebuttal. You said we're the biggest democracy in the world, but we're groping in the dark, and I'm quoting you, as far as our electoral rolls are concerned. Now, your party has just won a massive victory in the general elections that just went by less than 3 months ago. Would you consider that election conducted by the Election Commission groping in the dark?
Faye, this is very funny, I would say. I'm saying the process of election roll. Now, whatever rolls are available, the election was done. That has got nothing to do with the election results. But we have to be 100%, in as far as rolls are concerned. Now, the panchayat elections, the panchayat rolls are so accurate because each and every voter is there, it's known. But here, the bigger constituencies, we need some system where we have to see that it is easy, the duplication doesn't be there, and so it is all that. Groping in dark doesn't mean that you want to challenge the election results. Like, so many things are there. Now this Aadhaar linking, not linking, as Mr. Appar was saying, and he was quoting some Representation Act. But we have to do, the Chief Minister has written to the Election Commission, and let's see what Election Commission does about it.
Well, technically, just to also answer a question that someone has asked us on Involve, saying, is Mr. Fadnavis within his rights to suggest to the ECI to link? He's completely within his rights to suggest. The EC is also completely within its rights to decide whether or not it wants to take that suggestion. It's not compelled to take any suggestion that it receives. Apar Gupta, you have a rebuttal for Mr. Shah?
Yeah, quite certainly. So the two purposes which have been linked from what I can gather, if the first is transparency, the second is that we should utilize technology in governance programs, which may even include the conduct of elections. I'm getting some feedback, if the feedback can be turned down.
We'll just get that.
So the first thing with regard to transparency by itself, the first thing with regard to transparency, the thing is that what is being forgotten is that electoral rolls are put up online on the State Election Commission's websites, and they're made available to the public. Each political party, in fact, rigorously goes through the electoral rolls, and it ensures there's a check on electoral fraud, and also people can make sure that their names have not been excluded. In fact, this has given rise to the insight that when the National Electoral Voter Linking Purification Program was being done, in which in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana there was a linkage of Aadhaar and the voter electoral roll, it led to a large amount of exclusion, in which people who were already registered, close to 30 lakh people were actually excluded. So in fact, excluding people should also be seen with the same amount of a public policy priority as a thing which results in harm to democracy. This is a person who is a member of society, who is a citizen of India, not being permitted to vote because you've linked a faulty database with what is already working, which is the Election Commission's database. So if this pilot, which was done in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, is not leading to the kind of results through transparency, then we can't have transparency for the sake of itself. The second thing on technology and the use of technology, there's a huge debate all over the world with regard to how to use technology in voting mechanisms. And I go back to what my learned friend was saying. He's saying that in panchayats, there's a very good community and element of trust in which people know each other, which checks on electoral fraud. And this by itself speaks that technology is not an end in itself. It's not the solution sometimes, because the problem is very different. And in fact, there's a large-scale movement all over the world in which people are going back to paper ballots, because the thing with technology is sometimes it does bring solutions, but the solutions also give rise to more problems. It gives rise to threats. And this has been the core learning. So just on public policy grounds, I would say that this requires a much more considered thought process, and we should pause and think before we link each database with Aadhaar. This is especially given that I know that a lot of people who oppose Aadhaar linking with several things like driving license says that why don't you first link into the electoral rolls, etc. In fact, the political parties, the Chief Minister of Maharashtra should first actually start asking the Election Commission to have a better sense in terms of having a better jurisdiction on political parties itself, which are spending massive amount of money. In my mind, that would be the first public policy priority, checking the amount of money which is flowing in elections.
Yes, that would
That's all.
indeed
That's
be
all,
the most
Faye.
important
That's all
thing.
I wanted.
In fact, I also want to draw Mr. Shah's attention to the fact that during the last election in Hyderabad, the UIDAI, which is in charge of the of the database, in fact filed a complaint against the TDP in Andhra Pradesh, saying that they used the Aadhaar database to remove people from the electoral rolls, to profile people based on what they believe and don't believe in, and to target people with messaging. And they saw that clearly as misuse of the Aadhaar database. Wouldn't we be creating a far greater situation if we continued to make the Aadhaar database linked to voter ID and available? My second question is, Mr. Shah, it's widely also accepted that the Aadhaar database is flawed and is not foolproof at this point. We'd actually be muddying the waters of the electoral rolls if we linked it to the Aadhaar database, because it is not pure, it is not foolproof.
No, the first thing is that it's not an expensive affair. On the contrary, we'll be saving money. Now, technology, yes, there might be some flaws, but this will have to be looked into. We cannot, just looking at the Andhra Pradesh, we can always correct upon it. And the need of the hour is that there's so many people going to the people and spending a lot of time, but still the roles are incomplete. And in this process of cleaning the roles, if the technology, the Aadhaar is linked, and with all the flaws which may remain in Andhra Pradesh, where you're citing, but I'm giving you a startling example I've given you of Maharashtra about the old age people of 80, above 80. There are just 17 and there are about 28 lakh on the roll. Somewhere it has to be deleted, moved, and Aadhaar will definitely help in this. Yes, impediments are there, apprehensions are there, but the CM is on his every right. You just said in the beginning whether he should write or not. Any citizen can write to the Chief Election Commission, and Election Commission also,
all right, last
if the mind is open,
yes,
but they'll have to make change into some.
Yes, and I want to take this, it's a legal question to Apar Gupta. We have a question of, isn't linking Aadhaar with voter ID effectively making it compulsory against the court's order? The Supreme Court made it very clear that Aadhaar can be made compulsory only and only when it comes to gaining a subsidy of some sort or PDS of some sort from the government. Now, the right to vote is not a subsidy, it's a right. You cannot make Aadhaar compulsory based on that right.
Yeah, it's a right.
Yes, go ahead. Apar, go ahead.
Yeah, quite certain. So actually, the thing is, the definition under the Aadhaar Act in 2016 is so broad that even a service which draws and is enabled on the basis of any charge from the Consolidated Fund of India, and the Consolidated Fund of India is a common fund, right? It's used in all types of things, and it flows into several government programs on the basis of the budget. So the thing is that it can be legally justified, but I think on a much more plain reading of the law, if you don't stretch and mutilate the judgments of the court and the interpretation of the Aadhaar Act, I would say no, it can't be made a compulsory precondition, which this move, if it does go forward, will result in doing. And it also merits conversation that there's a petition filed by a BJP leader, Ashwini Kumar Upadhyay, I think, in the High Court of Delhi, in which he's asking for a similar thing, in which he wants the Aadhaar to be linked, or biometric-based authentication to be linked with the electoral rolls. And the Delhi High Court has given a period of 8 months to the Election Commission to reconsider this. So I'm just seeing these movements, and I'm saying that, of course, the conversation can get legal, but it's important to pause for thought and to consider what is the satisfying, what is the benefit, and what is the likely harm. And I see a lot of harm which may be caused due to this.
All right, Apar Gupta and Mr. Shah, thank you so much for spending time with us and answering those questions. Remember, the Maharashtra Chief Minister has written a suggestion to the Election Commission of India. It is up to the Election Commission of India to take that suggestion or not. It's not compelled at all to accept the suggestion. Anyone can write a suggestion. Any citizen of the country can write out that suggestion. There's another story you must know at this point, and that is the story of what's going on in Hong Kong. Now, the government of Hong Kong was preparing to go ahead with a highly controversial law that would allow extradition to mainland China. It sparked pro-democratic protests across the island. And the island, as you know, has been fighting to be fully independent of mainland China since 1997, and these protests have been regular. But this time, the protesters, who traditionally wear black t-shirts, were met with tear gas, rubber bullets, courtesy the government. The situation dramatically escalated when groups of street thugs wearing white shirts began assaulting protesters on Sunday. 45 people were injured in the streets of Hong Kong, including a pregnant woman and several innocent bystanders. Citizens suspect the attackers were backed by the government. And they also accuse the police of looking the other way and not coming to the aid of citizens. Footage broadcast live on Facebook showed people screaming as the men beat multiple protesters and journalists at the Wenlong station and inside the subway trains, leaving pools of blood on the floor. Jeff Pao, China editor of the Asia Times, joins me right now on this conversation. Jeff, good evening and thank you for joining us. Could you explain to our audience, please, what's going on in Hong Kong right now? Are the streets of Hong Kong now safe?
Yes. Since early June, there has been a protest against the extradition law, and protesters are opposing the bill because it will allow the government and the chief executive to send people to the mainland China. So people feel that they are threatened by this bill, and they went on street and for almost every weekend, and several protests have been up to 1 million people, 2 million people, and you can see there are only 7 million people in Hong Kong, so it's quite a large number of people in Hong Kong going on street. And the situation now is every weekend we have the protests and a peaceful march, and then in the evening there will be some clash between the police and some protesters, and the police will use tear gas and rubber bullets and fire these weapons at protesters.
Well, Jeff, tell us this. We understand that the 1 million, 2 million protesters are largely very young people who are very emotionally invested in this entire fight for democracy in Hong Kong. And there seems to be a lot of reports about use of excessive force by the police, the Hong Kong police, on these citizens. In your opinion, are those reports true?
Yes, you can see because the young people, they went on street, they don't bring any weapons. All they bring is an umbrella, a helmet, and maybe a mask, and they will not even bring some shields or metal bars, and then they will bring some water with them and some food, and but the police are using batons and long shields and also tear gas and pepper spray, and which can be lethal weapons if they shot at very close distance.
Right, Jeff Pao, China editor of the Asia Times, thank you so much for giving us that information. And of course, our prayers and our thoughts are with the people of Hong Kong, especially the young ones who've decided to go out into the streets in the millions to fight for what they believe in. The streets of Hong Kong right now, as Jeff said, every weekend there's a protest that starts off peacefully, but somehow ends in a clash between the protesters and the police. Now, before we wrap up the show, another quick check on what's going on right now. In Karnataka, we understand DK Shivkumar just spoke with the press. He talked about a deadline that he has issued right now to the rebel MLAs. KJ George speaking in the assembly at this point.
Krishna Baregaudru, Bara Arthadalli helidare. Nane Arthadalli helta idine anta kolkoli. Enu anta ಹೇಳ್ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ನಾನು ಹೇಳುವ ಅರ್ಥ ಏನು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಡಿಸ್ಕ್ವಾಲಿಫಿಕೇಶನ್ ಇದಾಗ್ತಾರೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ, ಯಾವುದೇ ಅಭಿಪ್ರಾಯ ಇದ್ದರೂ ಸಮೇತ ಭಿನ್ನಾಭಿಪ್ರಾಯ ಇದ್ರೆ 4 ಗೋಡೆ ಒಳಗಡೆ ಮಾತಾಡ್ಬೇಕಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ ಅಧ್ಯಕ್ಷರು. 4 ಗೋಡೆ ಒಳಗಡೆ ಮಾತಾಡ್ಬೇಕಂದ್ರೆ ಅದು ಯಾರು ನಾನು ಹೇಳಿದಲ್ಲ, ಸನ್ಮಾನ್ಯ ಉಪರಾಷ್ಟ್ರಪತಿಗಳು ರಾಜಭವನದಲ್ಲಿ ಶರದ್ ಯಾದವ್ ಎಂಟು ಸತಿ ಅವರು ಲೋಕಸಭಾ ಸದಸ್ಯರಾಗಿದ್ದವರು, ರಾಜ್ಯಸಭಾ ಸದಸ್ಯರಾಗಿ ಒಂದು ವರ್ಷ ಆಗಿರಲಿಲ್ಲ.
Who's a fairly senior leader within the Karnataka state government, Minister for Bangalore, is accusing again the BJP of horse trading. He talks about how he's effectively saying that the horse trading tactics that have been used by the BJP are known across the country. These are accusations effectively that have been traded now for 3 full days of assembly time. Nothing new is happening in this assembly at this point. I don't know how much longer we're going to have to wait to see, and it's interesting. And we missed the soundbite that DK Shivkumar gave, where he talks about a deadline that he has issued apparently to the rebel MLAs. So I'm curious to know what that deadline is, because I get the feeling voting will be around that time.
No, because I think he was probably referring to the speaker's notice to those MLAs to present themselves for a hearing, because the speaker has to hear them out before he serves them or decides not to serve them the disqualification proceedings. Yes. I think that's because that's been given for tomorrow 11 a.m. The speaker has summoned all those rebel MLAs at 11 tomorrow for that hearing. I think he's referring to that, and I think he's also saying something which is only partly correct. I mean, he's also saying that those MLAs don't realize that they can't become members again. Which is half the truth. It is not the entire truth. I mean, they can recontest an election. It's only in this house that they can't, but they can.
Basically, I think what he's trying to say is, let's assume this government falls, and BS Yeddyurappa then attempts to form a government. If he forms a government, these disqualified MLAs
can't become
will not be members of the House. They cannot be part of that government, and they cannot be ministers.
That's right.
And that, according to, I believe, for the last 2 weeks has been DK Shivkumar's main argument. That we will give you ministership, we will give you whatever you want. It's completely pointless for you to be switching to the other side, because you will have to recontest an election. I think also the argument that Kumaraswamy was making is that recontesting an election is expensive.
That's right.
But one would assume, there he is, that's DK Shivkumar. Let's just listen in. Okay, these are file shots. These are not live shots right now. But one would assume that those concerns of whether or not one can afford it might be looked after at this point for these
absolutely.
people.
I don't think the BJP is any problem of
affordability might not be
absolutely no
their
problem.
main concern. So this is where we are now. Do you expect them to vote tonight, Vinay?
Honestly, it's tough to say, because look, the speaker seems to have dug his heels in. I mean, he doesn't want to leave the house till something comes out of it. But the Congress and the Chief Minister don't seem to be in any mood to do. It's very interesting that it's a trust mode. It's not a no trust mode.
If, for example, the speaker has summoned the rebelling MLAs tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock, they would have to then be, the whip issued, you have to defy the whip. And then I can call you then I can summon you, right? Which means that tonight they will be defying the whip.
No, so
or have they already technically defied
They have
the whip?
technically, because they're not present in the house. So they technically have defied the whip already. But the fact is they won't turn up. I mean, there's nothing to lose. I mean, they're certainly not going to turn up for the hearing tomorrow.
Especially since there's this whole question of whether or not the whip applies at all.
That's right. Because their interpretation is the Supreme Court has given them protection.
And the Supreme Court has given them protection, if I'm not mistaken, for this entire session. And this is effectively a continuation of that session. So will they have to agree to the Speaker's summons? Isn't that part of the session?
No. So I think the Supreme Court's order says that this issue of the trust vote, you can't compel their presence in the House. So it is limited to this trust vote proceedings, that they can't be compelled to come to this House. Now that in many ways is being read as a protection against the anti-defection law. But I mean, subsequently, if hypothetically, just assume that Kumaraswamy wins the trust vote, and 10 days later a money bill is brought in and there is a fresh whip that is issued, then those people will be up for disqualification again if they defy it.
Yes. So they're not in a very comfortable place at this point. I'll tell you who's most uncomfortable: the people of Karnataka. And unfortunately, this is what we're having to witness, and it's likely to go on for a bit. We're going to leave it here on the Urban Debate because we've run out of time, but we're going to continue to track what's going on in the Karnataka Assembly as it progresses through the night. Thanks for watching. Good night.